Well, you have to give him some credit. Peter Dutton did front up to insiders on Sunday, after what was a crushing defeat in the electorate of Aston. And to give him even more credit, I have to say, I don't even think this was his worst appearance on the show. Let's take a look at some of the highlights. I use that term loosely.
Now, you said during this campaign that the by-election result would be, and I quote, a verdict on the leaders. No question about that. So, Mr Dutton, what is the verdict on your leadership?
Awkward question to start off.
Well, I think there were many messages out of last night. Obviously, the difficulties for us in Victoria.
You said in your own words this was a test of your leadership. So have you failed that test?
The answer's a definite yes.
Are we going to spend a minute dancing around the obvious?
Well, we didn't win the seat, so by definition, we have a lot of work to do. I accept responsibility and I'm the leader of the party. I was there last night.
Have you failed your own test?
He certainly did.
Well, again, by not winning the election, we've failed that test.
Oh, so now it's we
that have been set by us, for us by the Victorian people.
When Malcolm Turnbull said the Longman by-election was a test of his leadership and the Liberals went backwards, you challenged him for the leadership. Last night was far worse for the Liberal Party in the Aston by-election. Why should you stay as leader?
Well, I didn't challenge him for the leadership. Malcolm resigned as the leader, but that's ancient history.
Somebody's been rewriting history.
So here's a quick recap of what actually happened back in 2018.
Peter Dutton says he has no regrets in launching a coup that deposed Malcolm Turnbull.
Peter Dutton is trying to oust Malcolm Turnbull. The Prime Minister survived today's vote, but the numbers were hardly convincing, 48 votes to 35.
The Dutton defection. Senate backbenchers Jim Molan and Eric Abetz as Conservative flag bearers, the moderate Susan Lee from New South Wales and former policeman Jason Wood joined the Blue Line, and Queenslanders, spooked by the Longman by-election, freely closed ranks. Stuart Robert, Andrew Wallace and new Senator Amanda Stoker among them. There's now no secret of Peter Dutton's ambition.
He said to me that he doesn't feel he can remain in the cabinet, having challenged me for the leadership of the party, and so he has resigned.
It's nice to be in front of the cameras where I can smile and maybe show a different side.
His mashed potatoes are so creamy.
I made a decision to contest this ballot, and I believe that I had the best prospect of leading the Liberal Party to success at the next election. Now, that wasn't to be today. Well, I didn't challenge him for the leadership.
Are you being serious right now?
We've gone backwards since John Howard's high water mark in 96.
Should you stay as leader?
Of course I should.
It's probably easier to break that down into two questions. The first one being, will he remain leader? And the second one, should he remain leader? Here's Jane Hume giving him a glowing endorsement.
The Liberal Party's brand is not in terminal decline.
Given this is a far worse result than you and your colleagues in the Liberal Party were expecting, do you stick with Peter Dutton or is there a better option?
I cannot imagine that there would be any mood in the party room for change.
What is your ringing endorsement?
This is a very strong and united party behind the leader.
It's not a lie, if you believe it.
Peter has been amazing to work for. I went door knocking with him here in Aston and he was extraordinarily well received.
So you stick with him?
Yes, this is a blow. There's no doubt about it. But he is a leader with a solid team united behind him.
So you'll stick with him?
Well, I don't actually think it's in question.
And I can tell you it makes me more determined to rebuild this party and to be in a winning position by 2025.
But in terms of your achievements as leader, you said last night that I have had one test for my leadership, whether we can keep the party together. Is that really your main goal, keeping the show together? Shouldn't your main goal be trying to reconnect with voters that you're losing?
Well, of course it is, David, but the fact is that after a government goes into opposition, as was the case with the Rudd-Gillard government, as was the case with the Howard government in 2007, parties always tear themselves apart in opposition.
So what's happening with the Liberal Party right now?
You now hold only those 2 blue seats in all of metropolitan Melbourne. Can you explain why?
No, is the answer.
Well, David, as I said, if you go back to 2013 when we had a landslide victory, Victoria was still held by the Labor Party in terms of the majority number of seats. It's been going backwards for us since 1996.
Okay, I'm just asking why.
Well, this is what we need to assess.
So we've got Dutton saying that things have been going backwards for the Liberal Party since 1996, yet they haven't assessed the reasons why.
And we need to understand.
You don't know?
No, he doesn't.
Well, we're 10 months into this period of opposition, so the claims that we should have.
Just asking whether you have an understanding as to why you've gone backwards
well,
so far.
Our brand has suffered terribly in Victoria.
Why?
Well, people haven't voted for us at a state level. In the last 24 years, 21 of those years they voted for Labor.
So why is that? You must have some idea.
Well, that's what we need to assess.
You don't know?
I think we need to do the analysis of Aston, have an understanding of what people were motivated by, what caused them to vote Labor for the first time. I mean, for both major parties. This is a problem, though, if you don't.
So he either knows the reasons but refuses to say or acknowledge what those reasons are, or he genuinely has no idea whatsoever. Either way, it's very difficult to fix a problem if you either don't know or won't acknowledge what it is.
If you're unable to put your finger on why the Liberals are in such trouble in Victoria.
Well, David, I mean, Labor's spent the last 5 weeks throwing mud at us, at Rashina Campbell, at me, at the Liberal brand. Well, I mean, they are effective campaigners, and Daniel Andrews is ruthless.
Release the Kraken.
At a state level, he demonstrated that at the most recent election. So I think there are issues in relation to policy, to personnel, issues in relation to our campaigning techniques.
One of the big issues over recent weeks in Victoria and elsewhere has been this issue of transgender rights. Peter Dutton, where do you stand on this?
Well, I don't discriminate against anyone, David, and I won't tolerate people discriminating against people on the basis of their religion, of their sex, their gender, their skin colour, anything.
His voting record might suggest otherwise.
Should Liberal MPs go to an anti-trans rally?
And let me finish, and I think I've demonstrated that over my period of time in public life. I think people should have respect, and I think also the debate runs two ways. There are very strong views within many parts of Australian society, maybe not right here in the inner city, areas of our country, but in the outer metropolitan areas. This is an issue in terms of women's rights and the gender issue that has parents and others very worked up.
So would you have a problem with one of your MPs going to an anti-trans rally?
I don't believe that our MPs should be going to anti-anything rallies, to be honest.
Here's a standard strategy that politicians will use. When they're uncomfortable with a line of questioning, they'll divert the conversation somewhere else, and fast.
Apart from anti-Labor Party rallies, because they're ultimately what does wrong by our country. If you look at the debt...
Oh, nice segue. Smooth.
That the government's in at the moment. If you look at the spending policies, you look at the inflation, the joy that he's expressing at the moment, I think it's going to be a very different dynamic.
We'll see. What does the Peter Dutton-led Liberal Party stand for?
Well, we stand for aspiration.
It doesn't sound like this morning you're signalling any shift, any change, any new direction.
Well, if you're asking me about the fundamentals of our party, they're not going to change.
You know what they say, if something's broken, don't bother fixing it. Just throw it out and get a new one.
Climate change. Do you accept that what the scientists are saying, the world's already warmed by 1.1 degrees and is likely to breach the 1.5 degree tipping point in the next decade?
Well, David, we have been the worst salespeople in terms of what we've done for the environment.
Do you accept what the IPCC have said? Have you looked at their recent report?
I'm happy to accept it, but we need to be realistic about what we can do as a country, and driving businesses and industries offshore is only going to increase emissions.
He spends a lot of time dancing around what's essentially a fairly easy yes or no question.
Into the global environment, and it's going to lose Australian jobs and economic productivity. The cement industry is one such industry that I think is at real risk of leaving our shores. Now, we're not going to stop using cement.
Why do you say that? Because we've heard.
Well, because we've spoken very clearly with the industry, and
they're leaving.
That is the very clear.
They've told you they're going to go.
They have very grave concerns about the future of their sector. There are issues around steel.
Because the Chief Executive of Manufacturing Australia says the way the safeguards mechanism changes have been designed means they won't have to pass on significant increases for steel, cement, aluminium, bricks. Are they telling you something different?
Well, David, if you've got a company that has cost imposed on them, They're either going to take a cut to their bottom line, that is that they're going to reduce their profit, or they're going to pass those costs on to consumers. I think there are a lot of business leaders, frankly, in the country at the moment who are saying things differently in private than what they're saying publicly.
Why?
Because I think they're worried about social media. You guys all, you'll
So
race
they're lying to the public?
I mean, David, you will race to Twitter after this interview, after Insiders, to see what your supporters have to say.
I can guarantee you I won't.
Really? Well, I'm pleased to hear it. But there are a lot of people who do, including in the corporate sector, and I think it's time for a lot of those leaders to stand up.
Do you really think The Voice is going to want to spend its time telling the Reserve Bank what it should be doing?
Well, Megan Davis has pointed this out yesterday, that all of these areas will be within scope, David. I think every Australian starts with the desire to help Australians of an Indigenous heritage, particularly those kids. And if
within scope.
Well, let me finish this, because I think it's a really important point. I mean,
isn't it a bit alarmist, a bit ridiculous even, to say, oh, it's going to be, gumming up the works of the Reserve Bank or the Defence Force?
Yeah, of course it is.
Well, David, this is the biggest change proposed to the Australian Constitution since Federation, and the Prime Minister can't answer the basic questions in relation to how it will apply, how it will work.
I think the problem that Dutton and the Liberals have got is that they've taken the term opposition and applied it literally. They're pretty much just going to oppose anything the government put up, whether it's a good idea or a bad one.
Would you back it if the words executive government were taken out?
Buckle up for some attempted hardcore gaslighting.
Well, the government's been clear that they, and in fact they've gone against the Solicitor General's advice on this issue, that they are
That's not
going to
what they say, to be clear. To our viewers, they've said the Solicitor General supports where they've landed.
The Solicitor General and the Attorney General went into the committee with advice to take out executive government. They were overruled.
They deny that, Mr Dutton. They deny that, Mr Dutton. I just need to be straight with our viewers. They've denied that.
That's what happened, David.
How do you know?
Well, I have a better understanding, I suspect, than...
Were you in the room?
No, but I have a very clear understanding. I think some of your panellists and others have written on this with multiple sources out of the room, and it has been the advice to the government consistently.
But regardless, if they took that wording out, you still may not back it, right?
Well, we'll have a look at the wording.
Can we assume that's a no?
You wouldn't stop the referendum going ahead, though, would you?
Well, David, we'll meet as a party room and we'll have a look at the options on the table for us.
But you wouldn't vote against the referendum going ahead, surely?
Well, David, we're happy for the people to have a say. I mean, we've been very clear about that. And we don't hold a majority in the lower house nor in the upper house.
Hopefully Dutton stuck around after the interview to listen to the panel and gain some insight into why the Liberal Party continue to fail. Some of their points I think were actually fairly close to the mark.
I do think that the problems for the Liberal Party go well beyond leadership. The base is very much out of sync, I think, with community sentiment, and I think you can put that down to the branch stacking that has been going on for years now, since the election. What we've seen from the opposition is this strategy of opposing everything, everywhere, all at once.
It was a pretty good movie. I gave it 3.5 pickles.
If they keep listening to all those who say you're not right-wing enough, you're not conservative enough, well, they're on the path to oblivion.
That seems to be a message that just hasn't got through to the Liberal Party for whatever reason.
The Liberal Party, especially in Victoria, are not seen as competent. Why they are not seen as competent, I would argue, is because they have spent way too long arguing amongst themselves.
But there are these bigger questions as well about the Liberal brand.
Well, it's definitely on the nose in Victoria, isn't it? They don't need any more confirmation of that after last night.
It's not just Victoria.
No, but it's especially...
they're out of office everywhere on the mainland.
Clearly it's especially bad down here. like worse here than anywhere, but not great really anywhere, except Queensland.
I think this is what's called a Freudian slip.
Like worse here than anywhere.
We
are.
Worse. Yes, we are.
And Queensland is like this sort of stronghold. As Scott Morrison used to say, we have compulsory voting, and compulsory voting, the benefit that it keeps our politics centred. It stops it going mad left or mad right.
But they haven't.
We haven't done this. We haven't done this.
We haven't? We? Again? Does this guy actually work for the Liberal Party in Moonlight as a journalist, or what the hell's going on?
They've held the party together because they haven't taken a stand on anything.
There's no alternative. There's just no conceivable alternative to Mr Dutton.
Susan Lee, Angus Taylor, none.
No.
I think that's fair. does appear as though the talent pool is incredibly dry right now.
I would suspect that after the Voice referendum, depending on what happens there, then we're probably into a killing season for the Liberals.
I would suspect she's right. Well, that was the big post-Aston by-election insiders. If we can take anything away from Peter Dutton's interview, it's that the Liberal Party haven't really learnt from their mistakes. And they're showing no signs that they will in the near future either.